finished your federal tax return yet, or even started for that matter, the clock is ticking because the deadline to file your federal taxes is tomorrow. Now, if you need to speak to the IRS, you won't have to wait that long. Taxpayers say they actually heard a voice within 4 to 5 minutes. That compared, by the way, to 27 minutes a year ago. The IRS says they credit a boost in funding from Congress for their improved customer service. Brandon Arnold is the executive vice president at the National Taxpayers Union. And Brandon, tomorrow is that deadline. I filed over the weekend, and I learned there were lots of things I wrote off last year that I could not write off this year. Are people who itemize going to be surprised?
Yes, there will be some surprises out there, and hopefully a lot of people have not waited to the last minute, so they won't be surprised at the very last moment to complete their taxes. But one of the big changes that I think you might be alluding to is the change in charitable contribution treatment. You can no longer do so when you itemize. I'm sorry, you have to itemize. You can no longer do so if you take the standardized deduction. That was a change originally made during the pandemic that has reverted back to its previous status. We also see some other changes, such as the child tax credit reverting back to $2,000. It was $3,000 for 1 year, 2021, or $3,600 if you had younger children. Because that number is coming back down to $2,000, it means people are paying more in taxes, which can very easily mean a smaller refund for many Americans.
What can people do who don't get their taxes done in time? We say this every year, but tell us again.
Well, if you don't pay your taxes on time, unfortunately, there will be some penalties. You can have to pay interest on the amount that you owe to the IRS, as well as having to pay other penalties. So you don't want to be in that position. You can file for an extension that can help you avoid penalties, doesn't necessarily help you avoid interest. Also, if you pay your taxes, you think you're completely done, but it gets bounced back to you because you didn't fill out a form properly, or some item was flagged for one reason or another. You do get 5 additional days to reconcile those problems and get them resubmitted to the IRS. So be on the lookout for that, particularly if you're filing at the last minute.
Brandon, a lot of people think if they file for an extension, they don't have to pay any taxes. They think that they don't have to come up with a number that the IRS is going to hold them to, but that's not the truth.
Right. It's not a free pass. It's a delay. So you're still going to have to pay your taxes, and you could be assessed interest payments, indeed, if you do owe money to the IRS. So you don't want to rely on those extensions. You're much better off finishing by the deadline, which is tomorrow, as everybody knows, finishing by the deadline. That is your best case scenario. Now, like you said, call rates have improved at the IRS. They have gotten better in terms of customer service. They've hired thousands of new customer service agents, but this is a really busy time. So if you're waiting to the last minute, you could find yourself in a scenario where you're desperate for an answer about how to complete a form or how to answer a particular question. You can't get through. That's extremely frustrating. And in those scenarios, you may very well need to rely on an extension rather than putting erroneous information in your tax return and potentially facing an audit.
Brandon, every year Congress says they're going to simplify the tax code. They go into it and they say, we're going to make this so easy. All you have to do is have one piece of paper and you're going to turn it in and you're going to get your money back, or you're going to owe us. Is that true this year?
No, unfortunately, the tax code has gotten more complicated over the past couple of years. And we looked at a lot of the data. How long is it taking taxpayers to fill out their tax returns? And the numbers are up. Unfortunately, it's trending in the wrong direction. We had a number of big, complicated laws that passed over the last couple of years. The American Rescue Plan Act, the Inflation Reduction Act. These scrambled the deck when it came to the tax code. You have this new supersized EV tax credit, electric vehicle tax credit. All sorts of provisions have made the tax code much, much more complicated. Now, by contrast, the law back in 2017 made taxes in 2018 much easier to comply with. In that year, we saw a reduction in the amount of time and associated resources that went into people completing their taxes. We're trending in the wrong direction now. And we absolutely need Congress and the president to agree to some form of simplification, because we all have better things to do than completing our taxes.
Brandon Arnold joining us from one of my favorite cities in Maryland. Brandon, thanks for being with us tonight.
My pleasure.
Still to come on your evening debrief.